Welcome to the Inside Source Executive Video Series. My name is Dawn Tiura, and I'm President and CEO of Sourcing Industry Group. And I'm so pleased to bring you Chris Berger today. Now, Chris Berger is the head of procurement and travel at Bloomberg, and he has over 20 years of experience in industry prior to his time at Bloomberg. He was with California Technologies, or CA Technologies, MetLife, and A.T. Kearney. He also has experience on completing a transformation effort that has really transformed the entire CPO, the office of the CPO in the organization. And he also works with value-added services through strategic sourcing, category management, spend and supplier management, and organizational skill set development that delivers bottom-line results and top-line revenue to the company. So Bloomberg's all about the data. And as you know, throughout the conference, all we're doing is talking about cybersecurity and risk. So that has to change your approach these days. So how do you address it at Bloomberg?
Well, first off, it is very important to us as a company. We rely on keeping our client data safe and secure. More recently, we've got a directive down to pay even extra attention to all types of risks, not only data security, but vendor risk as well.
So on that note, though, I understand you have developed a formal vendor management program at Bloomberg. Can you talk about it, and why was it developed, how was it developed, and talk a little bit about the success of that program as well?
Sure. The program is pretty unique. One, we had to figure out how to assess the risk. Right? So at the engagement level, as I was saying, for every new engagement, one, the policy is that they've got to go through procurement for these engagements. And then what the end user does, or the requester, they'll go through a series of questions that we built online in a assessment tool. Based upon those questions, the engagement is categorized or risk ranked. And then based upon the risk rank, there's a series of assessments that then happen. And different parties may get engaged. So if it's cybersecurity or access to client data, we're tied at the hip with our corporate risk department. And they will assess that. We're also tied at the hip with legal. If there's any reputational risk, of course, there's questions about if they're on site in our facilities. There's questions because just roaming around, we're a very open environment. There's things on computer terminals, so a lot of NDAs have to happen way up front, and that type of risk has to be assessed.
And I have to compliment you. When I was over in London, we had some folks that had come in from Bloomberg, and they had said what a great environment it is that you've created. It's a collegial. It's non-competitive. It's all people pulling for the same outcome.
Yeah.
So you would have been very proud to hear how people talk about your organization.
That's great. Well, it's Mike Bloomberg's organization, and that's one of the reasons why I joined there. It's a very open environment. It's a trading room floor environment, no offices. He has the same desk as I do as person in the mailroom. So with that, there's inherent risk as well, because vendors are coming in. Things are not on whiteboards behind closed doors. It's very transparent. The conference rooms are glass as well, so we have to pay very close attention to who's on the floor. There's no pictures ever allowed, that type of thing. So Mike has been way ahead of his time in terms of keeping ahead of the curve, so to speak, on security, and does not take it lightly.
Oh, I can imagine. So how do you keep your agenda, though, in top of mind with the CEO and other executives to keep that attention? Because it's easy to say, oh, procurement can run itself, but really your agenda is so important to the whole company. So how do you keep it in their minds?
So, good question. I think it originally became top of mind when I was brought in and asked to do a transformation. So in the introduction you mentioned about a transformation, and yes, it's complete, but it's actually never complete.
Right.
We had certain goals to achieve around developing staff, people, process, technology, implementing technology, upgrading our technology, which is key to our future growth, and then our procedures. And the risk assessment is just one of those procedures. So we had to put together a business case to get funding to do this transformation, which had goals set for end of 3 years, which we just passed at the end of 2014. Happy to say exceeded those goals, which was very good. And I think a lot of that had to do with the support from above. So from the CEO, from the chairman, from the CFO, from the controller, et cetera. They were all major stakeholders. We presented to them in the beginning on a monthly basis and then a quarterly basis. So with that, the goals were, it wasn't just cost reduction. It was really around risk mitigation, around innovation, delivering value to the end users, And lastly, hopefully you do all those things, you can control savings and costs. But the goal really is around a fair price, right? So fair price for what we're doing. There was a lot of opportunities for efficiencies. With that business case, we didn't get a whole bunch of extra headcount to go build out category management and sourcing. So we had to derive strategies to opportunize on efficiencies so we can repurpose roles. So a tactical role of processing POs or doing even purchasing work over to a category manager role. So the more things that we put into PO and then the more automated POs that we did, the better, because then we were able to build a 25 plus team of category management with no additional headcount.
That's awesome. And because smart people don't want to do that dumb work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
and if you want to keep them, retain them, you've got to be challenging to them. So it sounds like you did that by through automation and just streamlining.
Right. The other thing too is just staying top of mind, to answer your question. Another thing was branding. Branding, I'm a big fan of branding for the department. One of the questions early on was, do we want to mandate? My answer from previous experiences and working under some very smart people was no. And in the culture of Bloomberg, a mandate wouldn't have worked as well. There's a lot of empowerment in the company. There's a lot of innovation in the company. And to me, the short story is, I don't want to spend a lot of time defending why they have to work with us. I'd rather sell them, why they have to work with us.
Yeah, the value
right?
that you bring to them.
Exactly.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of things that we did, from going out and talking to them, understanding their business, understanding what their challenges are, and then saying, okay, we're going to help, or at least try to help manage those and take advantage of those. The other thing we did too was, after we did a sourcing event, successful event, which they all were successful, we would type up a summary page. We would put in what the benefits were and be careful not to say, oh, it was all about savings. It was about consolidation of vendors, mitigation of risk, innovation, and then describe that innovation. And then we went the extra step of getting a customer testimonial, as we called it, right? So from the stakeholder and putting it right there. And then I would slip them into the presentations on up to the board, to Mike, to the CFO, to the CEO, to say, these are examples of what we said we would do. There's another dozen or so in the appendix. And I think that is what keeps it top of mind, right? Because the whole idea of us at procurement at Bloomberg is to enable the businesses to do their jobs better, right? To protect them, as well as protect the company.
But it sounds, you're taking the right role, though. It's not that you're not coming out the hero. What you're doing is enabling them to be successful. And that's the right way to position it.
Well, that's exactly, in my opinion, the right way to position it. And some of the exact words I've told my team all along is, you'll get your credit from me.
Yes.
All right? Through the evaluation period, the idea is you want them, your stakeholders, your partners, to get the credit, right?
Yes,
and give
exactly.
them those documents so that they come back. One thing I got to mention too is just more recently, so Michael Bloomberg is now back at work, right, after being mayor of New York, and we were in one of the meetings, a status meeting, and he read through the accomplishments for supply chain and procurement, and we were about to present it, and he said, no, I already read it. What are your challenges and what can we do to support? Right?
Wow.
Which was amazing in itself. The short answer was, well, there wasn't as many challenges as there were years ago, and we gave a few examples of some of the challenges that we're still mitigating. There's always challenges, and one of the department heads spoke up and says, I agree. If it was a few years ago, we would essentially roll our eyes having to work with alongside procurement, and the magic statement was, now I won't do anything without them by my side.
That's
which
awesome.
was
Wow.
worth its weight. It was really, really a good thing to hear. And we're working our way down all the different business units to make those relationships more to that mature level that one was. So it's working well.
Good job. So that's when, we don't have a lot of folks who can say they completed a successful transformation. So, you've come a long way.
It is good. And in my view, that the term transformation is your major transformation, right? Really going from a purchasing department to a global procurement a department that delivers a lot more things than just generating an RFP and delivering some savings. It's really delivering the innovation, making sure you're paying attention to quality. Definitely mitigating risks, especially in these days with cybersecurity, and a whole bunch of other things as well, on understanding what the business does. So from here on out, there's going to be a continuation of transformation, but you really have to, in order to build a building, you have to build that foundation. And I think, yes, we are successful in building that foundation, and we're just every year adding another floor on, getting ourselves higher and higher.
I love that
which is
visual.
great.
That's great. That's great. Well, Chris, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for joining us today, and you've been such a great SIG supporter and board member, and we've always enjoyed our time with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And
Thank
folks, that concludes another edition of Inside Source Executive Video Series, and I'll see you next time.